With my 1/25th scale 69 Chevelle finally complete, it's time to tackle another plastic model to RC conversion. Emphasizing lifelike realism and challenging myself in the process, the car I've selected next is this highly detailed Lamborghini Countach LP400 from Fujimi. Hello everyone and welcome! I'd like to start today's video by giving a huge thanks to everyone who checked out last week's video featuring the Chevelle. This car represents the latest in a series of projects that I've completed, which have really emphasized lifelike scale realism. Utilizing some of the smallest size RC electronics available, and as many of the highly detailed parts included in the plastic model kits as possible, has resulted in some great looking, shelf-worthy models that can actually be driven around. A fun mix of artistry and engineering, static model kits, and RC functionality. But with that Chevelle now successfully completed, it's time to move on to the next project, which is something a little different. All of the most detailed cars that I've built so far have featured a front-engine rear-wheel drive layout with a solid live axle. A pretty simple design that's not too difficult to miniaturize for these projects. This Lamborghini, however, is something a little different. Sure, it's rear-wheel drive, but the engine is in the middle. It also has four-wheel independent suspension with double wishbones on all four corners that shrunk down to 1/24 scale are looking a little thin. No beefy solid axles or heavy-duty stamped steel control arms here. This is definitely something a little different, but I'm up for the challenge and I look forward to seeing how well I can incorporate functional RC components into this highly detailed kit from Fujimi. As always, the first steps of this project are going to be learning more about the car itself and having a closer look at all of the parts included in this kit and seeing just exactly what I'm getting myself into. So without any further introductions, let's dive right in. Over its 63-year history, Lamborghini has had no shortage of iconic designs and iconic nameplates. Founded with the sole intention of creating the finest grand touring cars in the world, with radical styling and V12 power, Lamborghini would go on to produce some of the most famous vehicles of all time and arguably build the first supercar with the introduction of the Miura in 1966. Not only was the Miura the fastest production car money could buy upon its introduction, but it featured a transversely mounted mid-engined configuration. Unique for its time, though this mid-engine arrangement would later prove to be the standard for many high-performance sports cars in the subsequent decades. By the early 1970s, though, flaws and shortcomings with the Miura's design had been identified, with work underway to develop its replacement. This would introduce what I would argue is perhaps the most iconic nameplate in Lamborghini's history, the Countach. While many prior and subsequent names for Lamborghini's cars would be associated with bulls and bullfighting, the name Countach is an exception. It instead originates from the Piedmontese language spoken in regions of northwestern Italy, a slang expression for wow, an expression of amazement or astonishment, which is apparently the reaction from an employee upon seeing a prototype. And just looking at the car, it's hard to imagine a more fitting name. It features a sharp, wedge-shaped design that still looks radical today. Styling was done by Marcello Gandini of the famous Bartone design studio. Prior design concepts by Gandini, such as the Alfa Romeo Carabo from 1968 and the Lancia Stratos Zero from 1970, would be precursors to what would eventually be designed for Lamborghini. This was not only in the overall wedge shape, but also in the unconventional means of entry. While the Alfa Romeo Carabo concept car would be the first example of scissor doors, the Countach would be the first production car to utilize them. This added yet another unique design element, which was also intended to make reversing easier by allowing the driver to raise the door and lean out the side while backing up, as there was very minimal rear visibility from the interior. Power came from Lamborghini's famous V12 engines, sending it through a 5-speed manual transmission. One major engineering improvement over the prior Miura was that the engine was now longitudinally mounted. This provided a number of improvements, such as allowing for better weight distribution as more mass was kept towards the center of the vehicle. It also allowed for a more direct linkage to the gearbox, resulting in faster shifting, as well as allowed for better cooling and easier access for maintenance. Originally introduced in 1971 at the Geneva Auto Show, production of the Countach would span from 1974 to 1990, with numerous cosmetic and performance changes over the years. The first iteration, known as the LP400, would be produced from 1974 until 1978, which is the version that I'll be building here. These early cars are not only rare, but also distinct, with their lack of any exterior flares, 5-hole wheel designs, or spoilers that would later become synonymous with future iterations of the Countach, such as the LP500S or 25th anniversary. Obviously, opinions on which version of the Countach is the best will vary, with some preferring the more pure or minimalist early iterations, while others favor the more radical versions from the 1980s. The name would be revived for a limited production run of the Countach LPI 800-4, announced in 2021 to celebrate the Countach's 50th anniversary since its 1971 Geneva Auto Show debut. A total of 112 cars would be built, referencing the LP112 designation used during the development of the original Countach. With a car this iconic, it's no surprise to see a great selection of plastic models being available from numerous manufacturers in a variety of different scales. Whether you're looking for an LP400, an LP500S, or even the more modern LPI 800-4, there seems to be a great selection of 1/24 scale models available. As always, if you have a favorite kit, let us know below in the comments. But what I have here is this kit offered by Fujimi. This particular kit is replicating the LP400, which again was the earlier version spanning from 1974 to 1978. If you're looking for some of the other iterations, such as the LP500S or 25th anniversary, Fujimi has issued similar kits replicating those later versions. This is the original 1987 release of this LP400 kit, which seems to be pretty easy to find, though not exactly cheap. I don't remember exactly how I acquired this kit. It was probably either as a part of a lot, or just really cheap. But I imagine some of the reissues, such as this most recent one here in 2018, would be essentially the same kit, containing all the same parts. I don't know this for sure, but I don't think there have been any major revisions made to this kit with the subsequent reissues over the past few decades, but that's just a guess. Unfortunately, it's not exactly the most affordable kit, with many that I'm seeing for sale seeming to be outside of the US, so let's hope I don't mess anything up here with this one that I have. But getting this kit opened up and having a look at all of the parts inside reveals a lot of individual pieces with an impressive amount of detail. Even decades ago, it seems a lot of these Japanese manufacturers weren't messing around when it came to quality and detail. It's hard to have much of an opinion at this point before I've really put anything together, but so far it's looking promising. Oh yeah, and I did check the door panels on the real car, and they are this plain looking. In case you're wondering, the model makers here weren't skimping on the details, that's just how they are. A great looking set of wheels and tires is always nice to see in any model kit, and this one here is certainly no exception. Relatively soft rubber-like tires with some pre-painted wheels that show some fantastic detail. No doubt I'll be utilizing these for my own custom RC build. A nice selection of decals are also included. There's even some decals with specs that you could place on a plaque or base that you're displaying the model on. Something kind of cool about this kit is that they give you an engine stand, so instead of installing the engine inside the vehicle, you could have it be displayed separately. Unfortunately though, with these decals now being almost 40 years old, we'll have to see how well they decide to slide off the backing paper and adhere to the model. On this channel, we've had decal sheets included in model kits that were even older than this one, and they work just fine. But at the same time, we've had model kits only a few years old that had decal sheets that seemed to turn to dust. All I can say is that the decal sheet included in the prior Fujimi model kit that I put together, which was that Nissan 300ZX, was great. But that kit was a reissue that was only a few years old, while this one here is from the 80s. Just something to be aware of when you're buying these older kits with the intention of building the model. Those decal sheets over the years don't always hold up. This kit doesn't have any sort of moldy or musty smell, and everything looks really clean on the inside with the decals being placed in a bag, so hopefully it works out. Unlike a race car, for example, with a full livery, this isn't exactly a very decal-heavy model, so worst case scenario, I'll have to do the best I can with some detail painting. The condition of the paper instructions, as well as the cardboard box, can be a good indicator of how well the kit was stored. Again, no musty odor or yellowing that may suggest it's been exposed to a lot of moisture. Aftermarket or reproduction decal sheets are sometimes available for certain kits, but I'll hold out hope for what I have here being usable. Speaking of instructions though, everything seems nicely laid out with clear illustrations. Certainly a lot of parts and pieces to deal with, but just as I talked about previously with that Chevelle, when you're doing these types of highly detailed plastic model to RC conversions, these more detailed kits are really going to be ideal, as you can simply swap out these non-functional suspension and drivetrain components with your own functional ones. Well, that's the idea anyways. Some of these components are quite small, so we'll see how well I can do. But on a lower detail kit, such as a basic snap kit like this one for example, everything is just molded into one piece, and that's really not ideal. With these high part count kits, you just have to hope that the fit and finish of everything is good enough to where you don't really have to fight these pieces to get them installed correctly, and won't end up with a model that has a bunch of poorly fitting pieces which can detract from the lifelike appearance. Of course, perhaps the most important piece, that being this Countach body, looks fantastic. It looks spot on to the real thing, and it even has separate pieces for not only the engine cover and hood, but also those scissor doors. Some nice details, but I have a feeling some magnets are going to be required to help hold these pieces in place while driving around, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. It certainly won't be my first rodeo if that ends up being a requirement. Overall though, a great looking kit, if not a bit intimidating, but I'm certainly looking forward to diving in and getting some stuff put together. Even at this stage, I'm already brainstorming and coming up with some ideas on how exactly I'm going to make this model functional and where I'm going to place all of the RC electronics. I've said it before, but it seems like 90% of these projects is just brainstorming and putting together mock-ups. Plans could definitely change, but right now I'm thinking of sacrificing the under the hood area in the front and have this be a spot where I'm going to store at least some of the electronics. For example, I'm thinking this could be a nice spot to put the battery. As cool as it would be to have this section match the appearance of the real vehicle, I'm for sure going to have to put a steering servo somewhere up there, which is more than likely going to interfere with these details that you see up front. So if that's inevitable, I might as well just go ahead and put as many of the electronics as I can up front and go for maximum detail in the rear with the engine compartments and of course the interior as well. I wouldn't necessarily say the Countach is a small car, but not exactly a big car either. There are definitely some spots where I can hide the electronics. It's not the RC conversion aspect of this project alone that's difficult, as I could always just slap this body onto one of our RC chassis designs, as I've showcased with many projects previously if I just want a good looking car that's also fun to drive. The real challenge here is trying to retain as many of the details included in this model kit as possible and keeping components like the electronics out of sight. One thing about this car that works in my favor is that the engine and drivetrain is quite large relative to the rest of the car, as you can see in photos like this one. Much like I did with that Chevelle, I'll modify the engine, transmission, and rear differential pieces included in this model kit to fit over top of the functional RC motor. Unlike the Chevelle though, this is a mid-engine rear-wheel drive vehicle, so I'm going to have to design some new drivetrain components for this Countach. That should certainly be interesting, and I've already started on the process of designing and prototyping the drivetrain, but I'm going to be covering that in a future update. For now though, I'm going to wrap up today's video right here. I hope you all enjoyed this little introduction and model kit overview. If you have any experience with this kit, definitely let me know down below in the comments, especially if it's a positive experience. If it's a negative one, well, maybe just keep it to yourself, as I'm already way too deep into this project at this point, so maybe the less I know, the better. But I'm really excited for this project, and whether or not you're a fan of the Lamborghini Countach, I certainly hope you'll stick around to at least witness some of the RC engineering work that will be involved with getting this thing fully functional. I plan to cover this project in a lot of detail through a series of videos, just like I did previously with that Chevelle. As always, be sure to subscribe if you'd like to be notified of future updates with this project and everything else I've got going on here on the channel. As always, a huge thanks to everyone for watching, and of course to all of our channel members and Patreon supporters who help to make these videos possible. You can also get yourself access to a great selection of 3D print files, including the functional RC chassis that you've seen me use for many projects here on the channel. Thanks again everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.